Hey guys, it's Jamal here. Today at the Hangout, we're going to be talking about mastering. And just like I mentioned in the intro video, mastering is something that not too many people know about, but it's super essential to get your tracks radio ready and competitive. So today we're going to be working on this track here from Anya Elite. We're going to be going ahead and getting this track nice and competitively loud. We're going to be talking about how to get some sustain out of the track. We're going to be talking about how to get a nice bass sound. We're going to get some nice tight vocals, and we're just going to make this track better than it already was. We're going to bring out all the best characteristics. So if you guys have questions throughout this thing, go ahead and ask in the chat room, and I'll go ahead and get to those. But let's go ahead and switch over to the screen now. I got the session all ready to go, and we're going to talk about how to get this track ready.
All right, perfect.
Okay, so here we go. Here's the Pro Tools session. Now, there's a few tracks in here. When we're mastering, or at least in this case when we're mastering, we're not looking at stems, we're just looking at the 2-track, the mix, the bounce down. Usually we want that in wave format. Now, I have the main track, I have an aux track, I have another audio track, and I have the master fader here. So let's talk about these for a second. So the first track up here, this is the actual 2-track that we are going to be mastering. Now I have this routed to an aux track right under that. I called it track in just to keep everything nice and organized. And the reason I have that track down there is because if I was mastering more than one record at a time, if I was doing a full album, I don't want to have plugins on each of these tracks. I want to have all these tracks going into one track so I can have the plugins on there. It gives me more unified sound, and also it's going to allow my computer to not absolutely crash every single time I try to hit play. As you guys know, the more plugins you have, the more CPU is being used. The other reason why I do this is because it gives me a little bit more control over gain of the track. So in Pro Tools, if we look in the bottom left corner of every region or every clip, you do have a clip gain, so I can turn that down. I can also control the volume of the track using the volume fader here. So if it's going into my aux track, I have control over how much volume I actually need going into that aux track versus having the plugins on there and being more limited. Now, the track that's right under that aux track, this is another audio track, and I call it the print track. So this is the track that I route the audio track out to once I'm done with my master, or at least once I'm done with one pass at it, and I want to hear it. I go ahead and I print it out to that, so that way everything is all nice and consolidated. If I had to split anything up, or with multiple tracks in an album, you have some spaces there. Not everything's going to be gapless playback. The other thing too is that it allows all my plugins to be printed onto a WAV file, so that way I don't have to worry about plugin processing or anything like that. And then last in the chain is the master fader there. So that master fader there is just to control the overall volume, or not to control the overall volume, but to see the overall volume. So that's what I'm using as my master meter there. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started here. So first thing that you want to do when you're mastering a track, or anytime you get some audio from somebody, is to listen to it and see what's going on a little bit. So just ignore these 4 little hits there. Those are for audio sync purposes. We're actually going to start right here on this track. So here we go. I'm going to play a little bit of it.
Whoa, oh, oh. Whoa,
So let's stop here for a second. So we got the track. Listen to it. Everything's going well. All our routing is good. So let's go ahead and let's switch the output of this track to track in. So now it's going to be coming through the aux track. We'll just test it a little bit just to see if the meter's moving, and it is. Now, before we get going with anything, I want to point out a few things about this track. Now, one, the track is a little bit hot. You know, the mix is already peaking. Well, it's not peaking, but it's hitting the top of the meter pretty hard. So we're going to have to do something to get some more headroom so we can add some plugins on there. Now, normally when we master something, we want to have a track that has the headroom built in there. If we zoom in on this waveform, we can see that some of the stuff is already squared out, you know, so there is a good amount of compression on there. It's a good amount of volume from the mixing process, which is good. We want a loud mix, but we need room for our purposes. We need to be able to add our plugins on there, you know, add makeup gain, whatever we have to do to get this track to be nice and full. So what we're going to do starting out is we're going to go ahead and lower the gain on the track. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Now keep in mind, this is just adding headroom to the tracks inside of Pro Tools. This isn't actually changing the waveforms at all. So if we have things that are already clipping or already, you know, heavily compressed, they're still going to be heavily compressed, and we have to take that in consideration when we do this master. But at least now we have some headroom for Pro Tools. Now if we hit play, let's go to a loud section. So if we look at the master fader there, you see that we do have a little bit more headroom. I kind of want a little bit more, so I'm going to dip it just a hair. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started with the plugins. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to try to give this a little bit of analog warmth and open it up a little bit. So a great plugin for this is going to be our SSL comp from Waves. So I'm going to scroll down here, pull that up. So this is a bus compressor here. So real simple. A good trick that I learned about using this plugin for mastering is to go ahead and set the release to auto. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, my goal here again is to go ahead and add analog warmth and open it up a little bit. I'm not really looking to compress this track too much, so I really want to keep my gain reduction, my dB of compression below 4. I mean, if it goes over 4, every once in a while, that's fine, but I'm trying to keep it below 4 as much as possible. So I'm probably not going to have too much threshold. I'm not going to add too much makeup gain. That's going to be added at some other stages. Also, my ratio is probably going to be set low. I think I'm going to have a 2-to-1 ratio here. It's automatically set to 4, but I think I'm going to dial that back once I listen to this a little bit. And one more thing too, while we're getting started with this, with mastering, you're really listening for subtle changes. So unlike you would in the mix stage, where sometimes you might have big peaks, or you might use a lot of compression, whatever your mixing technique may be, we're really listening for small changes, and we're making those small changes as we go. So you have to tune your ears to that before you get started, or else you'll kind of jack up the mix. So let's go back into it. And of course we bypass on and off as we're going through to hear our changes. Okay, so right now I can hear that it's a little bit wider with this change, but I am going to go ahead and adjust the attack a little bit. I might make the attack a little bit faster, and then again, like I was saying, I'm going to go ahead and look at that ratio, maybe get a lower ratio in there.
You could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors if I'm feeling myself. Yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you.
I'm gonna go back to that section I was just at.
Money Saturday's the end, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you.
So right now, I lost a little bit of volume because I have the ratio set lower, but I'm getting a lot more sustain out of the track, and also I'm getting a lot of smoothness. And that's what I kind of want. I can always bring back that volume. I can choose to bring back the volume using the makeup gain on this plugin, or I might just wait and use the maximizer at the end of the chain. But let's just see.
Money Saturday's the end, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it. Yo, if I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step.
Okay, so I'm actually going to leave this ratio at 4. I kind of like that. So I'm done with this plugin here. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add in some EQ. So I got my analog warmth. I want to go ahead and shape this mix a little bit more. So I have some options here. Now in any situation you want to go ahead and use something that has a bunch of bands on it. So like if you're using just a Pro Tools stock plugins, you're going to use EQ3 7 band. If you have waves, HEQ might be good. You really want to have something with a spectral analyzer so you can really see what's going on, but you know, sometimes that's not the case. In my situation, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Ozone plugin, which is actually kind of like a channel strip in a way, where it's got all the tools I need for mastering. But I don't just like to use Ozone. As you can see here, I have the Waves plugin on top, but Ozone is usually what I use in the middle. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to delete these here because I don't need those just yet. But I'd like to use the EQ inside of Ozone. Really transparent. And that's just what I want for this master, because I'm not really trying to recolor things. I'm really just trying to bring out the best things or give certain elements a little help. And while we're on that subject, you know, definitely listen to the person you got the track from. You know, sometimes they might give you some hints. You know, like, hey, I want those vocals to come out a little bit more. Hey, you know, I really need the kick drum to come out a little bit more. So you want to be able to help them out, and this is the way to do that. You know, EQ. If it's a good mix, all the elements are going to be separated, or you know, as separated as possible, and you can kind of find the frequency range where certain elements are sitting. With a mix that's not so great, you kind of don't have that luxury. Things are gonna be muddy, so you know, you just gotta dig a little harder. Sometimes you can't find exactly what they're looking for because something else is covering that element, so you kind of gotta make compromises along the way. But this is a pretty tight mix. I can find all the things I'm looking for. I didn't get any specific instructions on, you know, what to bring out, so I'm going to kind of use my ears to make the best judgments. And I think the first thing I really want to look at is a little bit more presence in the vocals. So I'm going to see if I can get that tighter. So I'm going to take band 5, and I'm probably going to start around here, just 1K or so, maybe bring it back to 7 or 8, but I'm going to start here and see what I can do about getting more presence out of those vocals. Also opening up that mix a little bit more. I want this to be wider, you know, the big stereo image. So let's go ahead and play.
Money Saturday's the end, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it. If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga, could you get elected? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect. Maybe something more, but never nothing less. If you ain't studying, then don't line up for the test, yo. Put your pencil down.
Okay, so right there seems like a nice spot. So at about 3K, like I think it was like 3 or 4K, there was a nice crispness, a nice high end there, but it kind of thinned out the vocal. So I pulled back this band to about, what is that, 1.6, 1.7, whatever. So I got some nice presence over there, and also it did widen up the mix a little bit, but I still want a little bit more out of this. Let me see what I can do about this. Now, I typically don't try to adjust the high end right away, like the far high end stuff, the 8K and beyond, because you could be adding a lot of harshness into the mix. But let's see if I can add a little bit of that to give me that width that I was talking about.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's on.
Okay, so right now that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pull this band down a little bit. I think it's a little bit high, this band number 5. I'm gonna just give that a little bit of boost.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day.
Because I don't want to thin out the track, and I don't want to bring any harsh frequencies back in there that may have been taken out of the mix. So I'm also going to go ahead and just tighten that up just a little bit.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a Monday.
Yeah, so right now we got a lot more life in this track because we brought out those frequencies over there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add some more fullness to this mix. So I'm going to look at around 200, 300 and see what I can do over there to get some fullness back. Now I could just use band 3. I might just turn on band 2 in this situation just in case I need to use band 3 for something else. So when you're using plugins like the Pro Tools stock plugin or the Logic stock plugin, you're going to be limited. I think the Logic plugin has 7 bands as well. So you got to be economical about where you're placing these things. But also remember that you can stack EQs too. So the next EQ in the chain is not going to, once it's flat, it's not going to affect the first EQ. So if you need more than 7 bands, go ahead and stack your EQ. In this situation, I think I'm only going to need the 8 bands that's allotted to me in Ozone. So I'm going to turn on band 2, and I'm going to go ahead and go over here and see what I can do about getting some fullness.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only 'cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's the production. You want something, step up your.
So right now, with this spot boosted, I have about 200 boosted. I'm getting some nice warmth from the low notes in the pads. Let's listen to that
Monday,
again.
Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking.
Also, the bass is sticking out a little bit more, so I like that. I want this to be nice and warm. I want this to be a big sounding record.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like
Yo,
it.
if I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only 'cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a good difference right there. So I'm going to leave my EQ the way it is right now. I'm not going to look at the kick drum just yet. I have some other ideas in mind for the kick drum I'm going to try before I go back to the EQ and try to find the frequency for that kick drum. So far, we have our SSL comp, our bus compressor, to get that nice bus warmth sound. I have Ozone on, and inside of Ozone we have the EQ. So next, I want to go ahead and look at dynamics. In particular, I want to look at multi-band compression. This is really going to make the difference here. Unlike regular compression, where you're kind of overall compressing the signal, multi-band compression is working on frequencies individually. And this is great for mastering because, you know, sometimes there's just one, you know, if you listen to a bass, for example, or a kick drum, for example, you know, it sounds really great except for when it hits one spot and it's just a little bit too loud. This compressor will go ahead and compress that frequency once it reaches past that threshold. Instead of compressing the overall sound of the mix. And this can really help to smooth things out, give us more sustain, gives us more of an opportunity to add back some of that loudness with the last stage of limiting that we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of this, and I'll talk about how to use this Ozone plugin.
Monday, Saturday, stuntin', even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a fun day. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it.
Okay, so right now we're in band 1 view. So this little icon here, we click the arrows to the right of that or left of that, we can switch between the bands. But we also have the option of looking at all the bands at one time, which is the mode that I like to use most often. And we can go ahead and we can adjust where these boundaries are by clicking and dragging. We can turn them off as we need to. We can solo them, which is a really great feature. That's what I'm going to be doing a lot of. But the really cool thing about using the multi-band compression inside of Ozone is to go ahead and use the learn function, which will go ahead and kind of adjust the boundaries here for us.
Even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a fun day. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause
So now it's giving us where it thinks all those frequencies are lying. This is going to give us a really great shot at doing some accurate multi-band compression. But if I needed to, I can go ahead and I can move them around to get to more accuracy. So I'm not really going to do too much with this. I'm really just having this on to kind of touch the mix. I'm not really looking to do a whole bunch of compression here. I just want to control spots that are just a little bit too loud. Again, to get some more sustain, get some smoothness out of this mix, so I can go ahead and adjust the maximizing later with that limiting.
Monday, Saturday, stuntin', even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a fun day. Now I ain't gotta sell it.
Now the trick here is to listen for spots that might be sticking out a bit too much. So what you can do is you can solo these bands. You could just hear what's going on in one spot. Now if you hear right away that maybe like the mid-range is like sticking out way above the high end, then you would go to the mid-range spot, you know, so we have, it's kind of overlapping here, so we can adjust this if we needed to, or we could just go over and use the suggested boundaries. And I would go ahead and compress this a little bit. I'd pull it back,
Monday, Saturday, stuntin', even though it's Monday. Fuck with me.
so those frequencies get compressed a little bit more. Now that's a little extreme. I don't think we really need that. Like I said, the mix is pretty balanced. I'm gonna leave this at 12 to start out. I think the thing that might need to be compressed in this situation is going to be our far left side, or really low frequencies. There we
Monday,
go.
Saturday, stuntin', even though it's Monday. Fuck with me, every day be a fun.
So I'm just compressing this a little bit to get that bass to be a little bit more in control, because I'm hearing that it's kind of, it's not all over the place, but I'm hearing a little bit too much of it with certain notes. And also there's a lot of it in my sides. I don't really want that in my side. I will go ahead and use some imaging later on though to take care of that. But right now, I think we should be able to really clean this up with a little bit of compression here. So I'm turning it on and off to hear my changes. So I don't know if you guys can really hear that change, but I can hear it very well. The bass is in much more control.
It's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a fun day. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you.
Come on,
to
Meek.
like
Yeah,
it.
hold a little daddy, take your feet up off the gas. The niggas on our bumper, so we just let 'em pass. I can tell it that 'cause it's
Now, the other thing that I'm listening for in this situation is the shape of the kick drum. By adding a little bit more compression here on this far left band, I'm really starting to bring out more punch in that kick drum. Before, it was like nice and boomy, but there wasn't as much definition as I would have liked to heard. Would have liked to have heard inside the mix. Now I'm getting a lot more of that definition. I'm getting a lot more of that punch, a little bit of click, but that's okay.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you.
And now I'm gonna adjust the release a little bit to get it to pump a little bit more.
Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like
Yo,
it.
if I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you.
Okay, so I think I'm going to be done with my multiband compression. I'm going to go on to the next thing here. So I want to go ahead and excite these frequencies a little bit. So I want to add some nice color to it, a little bit of brightness, get those things that really stick out. And there's a few spots I think we can really benefit from this exciter plugin. Now, a good trick here is to go ahead and pull these back to about 50%. So that way we're kind of side chaining and not just going full wet. We get a bit more flexibility if we do it this way. So I'm going to do that across all the bands here. And guys, don't forget, if you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat room and we can go ahead and answer those for you. And just two more. And the subtlety theme still applies with this plugin. We're really not looking to crank this all the way up because we don't want to add a whole bunch of color. Also, the thing is that we can go ahead and really thin out the mix or add harsh frequencies back in there by boosting up this exciter plugin a little bit too much. Really just looking to get a little bit more presence out of these. Not looking to reshape the whole mix. And again, we can use the learn function here. So it'll kind of give us a idea of where it thinks these bands should be located.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday.
Now I like to go ahead and get started by cranking it all the way up, so that way I can just hear what it sounds like when it's totally affected. Then I can dial back.
If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room.
Let me turn up the volume for myself a little bit.
I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga, could you get elected? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect. Maybe something more, but never nothing less. If you ain't studying, then don't line up for the test, yo. Put your pencil down and settle with the rest.
And I'm going to change this option here. I was using triode. I'm going to see if I can use a different type of excitement here.
You could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room.
So I'm just gonna be real subtle here, boosting up those low mid frequencies.
Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga. Could you get elected? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect.
So now we can hear that bass is really sticking out a lot, but in a good way. We controlled it with the multi-band compression. Now we're just exciting that so it's sticking out, giving us nice presence.
You could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles.
Okay, so far, really big difference here when we bypass the plugin and then turn it back on. We're really hearing Ozone do its job here. We're bringing out a lot of excitement in this mix now. A lot of bounce, a lot of character. And width too, getting a lot of good width here. Alright, so I'm not going to do too much more with this Exciter plugin. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now I have the option here. I can go ahead and use post EQ if I need to. I don't think I'm going to go ahead and worry about that right now. I think what I want to move on to is the Imager plugin. Now, with this Imager plugin, sometimes I choose to use it after the Maximizer plugin in Ozone. I'm going to go ahead and put it on second to last here in this situation and see what it sounds like before I use that Maximizer. And again, I'm using the learn function there to move those bands around. So using these scope options here, I can see that the mix, it's not totally all over the place, but it's a little bit wider than I want it to be, and I think that's because we have a lot of bass in the sides like I was talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this first band here. I'm going to pull that bass pretty much all the way down, and that's going to take my bass out of stereo. That's going to put my bass in mono, so it's going to be nice and tight in the middle. You should hear there's a lot more punch to it now. And if we look at the scope, it's also a lot more organized now. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to widen up those high mid frequencies a little bit. Again, we're going to try to get as much width out of this song as possible so we can make it a nice big sounding record. And a small change there made a huge difference. Let's go ahead and bypass on and off. Now the trick here is to not add too much. Just like if you were using the Imager plugin by Waves, if you make that plugin too wide, the S1 Imager, if you make it too wide, you really start to thin out your mix, and you can also add in those harsh frequencies. Same principle is going to apply here. We're not going to add too much to it because we've already, the mixing engineer has already gone ahead and did all the panning and whatnot that he or she needed to do. We're just going to go ahead and try to enhance that a little.
then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to go back to my first EQ. I'm going to see if I can bring down some of those high frequency a little bit, because now that I have the multi-band compression, the excitement, and then this imager here, it's sounding a little bit harsh to my ear, so I'm going to try to rectify that situation.
You could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga, could you get elected? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect. Maybe something more, but never nothing less. If you ain't studying, then don't line up for the test, yo. Put your pencil down and settle with the rest.
In your favorite city, getting big money, Saturday stunting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a fun.
So it's bringing up a little bit more width in those high and mid frequencies. Maybe bring it down just a little bit. Now, if I'm still having issues here with those high frequencies, I could go ahead and add in my post EQ, or I could go ahead and use the dynamic EQ here, which will also do some kind of multi-band compression, but I don't think that's too necessary. I'm going to go ahead and just readjust my multi-band compressor here that I have after the EQ. And I think I'm going to just go ahead and do one more pass here on this first EQ, see if I can bring down either this band number 5 or band number 7, bring it down just a little bit more.
Could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish.
So right now, with these changes that we have, the vocal is coming out a lot clearer. We got some nice presence on that. We have some width. We're not really doing too much to reshape the color of the track. It's pretty much the same color all the way through, or not all the way through, but the same color that was there. But now we have better elements. All the best stuff is coming out a little bit more, and we haven't even got to the last stage of things, which is the maximizing part, which is going to really squash things together, gel it up, give us that nice volume that we're looking for out of the master as well. Now, maximizing is usually, or the maximizer plugin, or any kind of limiting, the last stage of limiting there is usually the last thing you're going to do on the track. But I have another trick that I like to use, I'm going to talk about right after I throw this maximizer on. Now, right off the bat, it's going to be a lot louder, so we're going to have to adjust that. If it's too loud, if we're starting to clip, we definitely want to bring that ceiling down a little bit, maybe bring up the threshold. Also, we want to turn on true peak limiting, so this is going to look at the real peaks inside of the track, not just the peaks from maybe the Pro Tools metering, but the actual peaks that may have occurred in the mixing process, that are actually in the 2-track that we got to master. And I'm going to adjust the character to transparent, because again, we have a good amount of compression on the mix. Don't want to do too much compression here. Or at least I don't want to hear too much compression. I want there to appear to be very low compression.
Then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your...
Now, I don't want too much attenuation here. A good rule of thumb that some of you guys may have heard me talk about is like no more than -6. You can especially see that if you're using like the L2 from Waves, or if you're using the I forgot what it's called inside of Pro Tools, but the I think it's the Maxim that they give you, that last limiter there. You know, no more than -6. Once you get past -6, you really start to hear the compression. You can start to hear crunch, and we don't want that. We definitely don't want that at all in the mix. So I'm not really doing too much as far as threshold goes. I brought it down about 0.6. I might bring it down just a little bit more, see how much I can push it. But again, because we already have a lot of compression on the mix itself, I can't get away with pushing it too much. So when I bypass that on and off, you can hear a huge volume difference. And that's always going to be the case. What we really need to listen for is character here. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresh. Okay, so if we look at our peaks at about 0 on our output. RMS, little bit, it's like, think of like 2 above what the RMS was for the original. Let's look at it. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's about 2 more, so that's pretty good. We're getting some good volume there. Now, one really great thing about this Ozone plugin is if we look over here in the bottom right hand corner, we also have a bypass button. Works the same as a bypass button up top, but we also have this ear button here. And what this will do is it will go ahead and bring the plugin up to the same volume. So let me rephrase that. So when you turn on the ear, it's going to go ahead and make the plugin sound as loud as it did when you had all the stuff going. So like the maximizer, all the multi-band compression, all that stuff, it's going to sound just as loud even though it's bypassed. So let's turn that off. And if I bypass now, all the volume is gone. So that way I can't really tell if I'm really adding character to the mix or if I'm just adding volume. Turn on the ear. Everything's going to be the same volume, so it's going to be the same volume as if it was bypassed, even when it's on. If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could. And I gotta clear these peaks from when we turned off the maximizer. Okay, so I'm done with my Ozone here. So just go through the chain one more time. So I had SSL comp into Ozone, and we're going to talk about Ozone as if they were individual plugins there. So we have equalization, we have dynamics or multiband compression here, we did some excitement with this exciter, we did some imaging here, took out the low frequencies from the sides, Tried to make them as mono as possible. I might actually go back and adjust that a little bit more too. And then we did the maximizer here. So we went ahead and we did the last stage of limiting, set the transparent so we don't really hear so much compression, or at least we're trying not to hear so much compression. We want that to work naturally. And the threshold, we didn't really pull it down too much. We pulled it down about 0.7. The mix is already pretty loud. We didn't really need to do that. It's responding pretty well at this level here. So next thing I want to do is I'm going to pull up this plugin that I like to use. And this is what I was using for the last stage of limiting before I start using Ozone. It's the, let's see, the Slate, the Digital FGX. So I'm not going to use this for compression. I'm not even really going to use this to add any makeup gain. I'm going to use this for its transient control here. I like it a little bit better than just using the Ozone option. If we go back to that plugin, let's put them up side by side. Ozone, and then let's do Slate. So I'm going to put them up side by side just so you guys see. So with Ozone, we have this transient emphasis that we can turn on. But with the Slate plugin, we have the option to adjust the low punch, the detail. We have the dynamic perception we could change, and we can change make it harder or smooth. The Ozone plugin, we just have that one option. Honestly, with this master, I think if I add this in there, it's going to kind of give it a little bit too much grit, and I don't want that. I want to be able to have full control over it because I just want to hear the punch. I don't really want to, garble up the mix with it. So let's go ahead and let's close out this Ozone. We're going to leave that alone for right now. And let's go ahead and see what we can do about getting some nice knock out of this.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday.
And again, really subtle changes here, so you really got to be paying attention to that. We don't want to push this too hard.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you are.
So we adjusted the low punch. We're adding a little bit more of that kick drum in there essentially, and now we're gonna go ahead and add detail to those transients.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only 'cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application.
And I'm gonna take this dynamic perception, and I'm gonna crank it all the way, just so I can hear what it sounds like when it's really working.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
If I'm the
So I think it's flattening out the mix a little bit too much, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it back.
Monday, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
If I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you could be the favors. If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only 'cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through. It feels so good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby, I'm sorry, but that's the production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your muscles and your money don't affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga, could you get elected? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect. Maybe something more, but never nothing less. If you ain't studying, then don't line up for the test, yo. Put your pencil down and settle with the rest.
In your favorite city, getting big money, Saturday, starting, even though it's Monday, fuck with me, every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you.
Come on,
to
Meek.
like it.
Hold a little daddy, take your feet up off the gas.
Okay, So let's go ahead and let's listen to a little bit of this. We're going to take all the plugins off and we're going to add them in one by one.
Money Saturday starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it.
So here's the SSL.
I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like
Yo, if I'm the shot, then you could be the chaser. If I'm the party, then you
Now
could
we're going
be
into
the
Ozone.
If I'm feeling myself, yo, it's only cause I'm waiting on you to finish filling out your application. Goddamn, it's the man coming through.
So
It feels
Equalizer.
So good when you got fans in the room. A long time, baby. I'm sorry, but that's a production. You want something, step up your fucking seduction. Your
Then we have our
muscles and your
multi-band
money don't
compression.
affect this. Come with something fresher, more than an erection. Put it to a vote, nigga.
Now our
Could you
exciter.
elect it? Once you get this, promise never to neglect it. That is what I demand and expect. Maybe something more, but never nothing
Imaging.
less. If you ain't studying, then don't line up for the test, yo. Put your pencil down and settle with the rest.
And then last we have the maximizer.
every city getting big money Saturday starting, even though
Let's bypass that whole plugin.
every day be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy.
Now let's go to the slate.
It's on you.
Come on, Meek.
Yeah, hold a little daddy, take your feet up off the gas. The niggas on our bumper, so we just let 'em pass. I can tell it that 'cause this mama, she know she bad. And that's why they stay pressing that double tap. Fix your face, boy, you can't miss what you never had. No usher, but still you got sit back. Grab still a pic, grab a glance, babe.
It's on who?
It's on you to like it.
In your favorite city, getting big money Saturday starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday. Now I ain't gotta sell it 'cause you already see it. The way you been looking, I can tell that you need it, boy. It's on you to like it. It's on you to like it.
It's on you, baby. 5, 4, 3, funny money.
In your favorite city, getting big money Saturday starting, even though it's Monday. Fuck with me every day, be a Monday.
All right, so now we got a nice and loud track. You know, loudness isn't everything, but it's definitely important if you want to be on the radio for sure. But we also have a track that's a lot tighter in our bass. We have a lot more punch in the bass. We also have some good sustain in that mid-range, the high frequencies. We have a wider sounding track. So we get a nice wide stereo image. Also, most importantly, you know, being the human element on the track, we have the vocals that are sticking out a lot more. So before, you know, we can hear them, but they were they weren't sticking out enough. They're kind of sitting behind a little bit too much. But now with the EQ, I think we really brought those vocals out a little bit more. So now they're sitting on top of the mix. They're not, you know, just totally, you know, sitting like, yeah, you know, we just threw these vocals on top, but they're definitely sticking out a little bit more so we can hear them with a little bit more clarity. Okay, and then again with this Slate Digital plugin, we affected those transients. We affected the transient perception, the dynamic perception, added some nice low end punch, made our kick drum stick out a little bit more. So last thing to do here would be to go ahead and route this aux track into the print track. I'm just going to do it as a bus. So I'm going to choose my empty buses, 1718. I got to make my track input bus 1718. And now with this, we can really see how the waveform has been reshaped. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the beginning. I'm not going to print the whole thing, but I just want you guys to see what it looks like, see how the waves compare now. So we're going to go ahead and record arm.
Whoa, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, oh. Yeah. Hang on to the edge of your seat. I'm about to show you something. You ain't never met a guy quite like me. Is this what you really want? In your favorite city, getting big money Saturday starting,
So let's go ahead and look at that. So significant difference in waveform size there, right? Not bad. Still have some peaks in there. Or not peaks, but still have some squared out waveforms there, but there's nothing we can do about that. I personally like my masters to breathe a little bit more, but it also really depends on the style of music that you're going for. If you listen to like the Roscoe Dash stuff, that stuff's just all out all the time. So having those dynamics aren't really going to work out for that style of music. But I think this is fine. This looks pretty good, sounds pretty good. Again, when you're mastering, you really want to have a WAV file. In this case, we did MP3. If you have the option of asking the person for a WAV, they send you an MP3, definitely take that, because you're going to give them a much better result. But it sounds pretty good. We got it printed. Looked at the master fader as we're going through. Let's check it out. So at the loudest portion of the song, no clipping at all, but we are using all the bits, so the peak is hitting right at 0. So we're really good here. We're okay. And now we can go ahead and bounce this track out, send it out to the person, let them hear it, see if they have any notes on it, and just go on from there. Cool, guys. So remember, questions about anything, go ahead and hit that that chat room so we can go ahead and get those answered as we wrap this thing up. All right. Cool.
Click subscribe to stay up on the latest from the Recording Connection.